Hi everybody, today we're going to be looking at a concept in computer science related to passing parameters into subroutines. We're going to be looking at two concepts known as ByRef and ByVal. The easiest programming language that I can find to clearly explain this concept is Visual Basic, so we will be coding today in Visual Basic. Remember that coding has transferable skills. This means that even though we are coding in a language that you may be unfamiliar with, you should still be able to recognize things like variables, functions, procedures, function calls, assigning data to variables. Okay, with your own knowledge of programming. This is known as having transferable skills. You recognize features of a programming language even though you may be unfamiliar with the programming language. So let's get started. What I'm going to do in Visual Basic is create a subroutine. This is going to be a procedure, and I'm going to give it the name display text, and it's going to take a parameter which is a string. And let's just end the subroutine there. Now, what this subroutine does, this procedure does, is very straightforward. It simply displays the parameter into the console area here. So this is my design for this procedure, which I'm calling display text, which accepts one parameter. Alright, let's go into our main subroutine here. This is where I'm going to write my computer program. My computer program is going to be very easy. I'm simply going to call my procedure and send it some data as an argument. Okay, so let's see if that works. Yay! Okay, hopefully this error will go away in a minute. Everything's fine. So, we just call the procedure, send it some data, and write it to the console. That's what my procedure is doing. Now let's just make things a little bit different. I'm going to declare a variable called message, and I'm going to assign it some data. And instead of doing it that way, I'm going to send the variable as an argument into the procedure call, and let's run that and see if it works. Yes, that's fine. Question. Okay, let's just do one more thing. Inside this procedure, I'm going to mess around with that parameter. I'm going to say that it's we're going to concatenate an exclamation mark onto the end of it and then display it in the console window here. Okay? So hopefully we're going to see hello exclamation mark. Brilliant. Now, question. We have taken a parameter, some data here, and we've changed it. Has the original data stored in the global variable, this is a global variable, MSG, has the data in that variable also been changed? Well, let's find out. MSG. So we've got this text here. We send it to a procedure. The procedure messes with it and outputs it. And then we go back to the main program when that's finished, and then we write the original message. Are we going to see hello exclamation mark, or are we going to see hello exclamation mark, hello, which was the original message? Let's run and find out. So you can see that the data stored in the global variable has not been impacted by the procedure's processing of the parameter data. That's because in Visual Basic, the default for sending a parameter into a subroutine is ByVal. what this means is the procedure gets a copy of this data. When I call this procedure, I send it a copy of this data. So the original data is not changed. I'm sending data into the procedure ByVal. That means we only send a copy of the original data, not the original data itself. Okay? Now then, let's change this ByVal to ByRef. What's going to happen this time? Are we going to see hello exclamation mark, which is what's happening here, followed by hello? Or are we going to see hello exclamation mark again? Has this original data been impacted by this way of sending data to a procedure? Let's run and find out. Whoa! There you go. Okie dokie. Now the reason for that is, this time we're not sending a copy of the data into the procedure. We're not sending a copy this time. What we're sending this time is a reference to the actual memory location where the data is stored. So now, when we play with that data, it will change at that memory location because we're sending a reference to the memory location. We're not sending a copy of the data this time. Okay? So even though display text is a procedure and it's not returning anything, it's still managed to change data stored in a variable outside of its own scope. So that's quite an interesting concept. Remember, message is a global variable in my main program, and if I want to change it in a procedure, I should pass it by reference. Okay, so I send the procedure a reference to the memory location of the variable. Okay, so that's another option. Now, the question is, how can we reflect that in a structure chart? Well, here's one idea. Our main program sends some data into a subroutine as a parameter. So that's really what that's reflecting or illustrating. And this subroutine returns a result back to the main program, because we know that there's a variable in the main program that needs to store the change. So we return data back to the main program. Now, that doesn't really reflect the situation that we've just looked at. In the situation that we've just looked at, we were designing a procedure. The procedure didn't return anything. So this isn't an accurate illustration of the situation that we have just looked at. So what is an accurate illustration? Well, this is what we are doing. In a structure chart, when we know that a global variable is going to be manipulated by a procedure, this is how to draw it. We've got a double arrowed diagram here with a white circle in the middle. And what this means is this procedure is going to do something to x, and because we're passing it by reference, x will change in the main program. Right? So this illustrates ByRef. Whereas, okay, that's really as much as I want to say. Thank you.